We are back, baby. We were gone on a little hiatus for the past week because I was on vacation. But you are back and we're back. This is the DFS Build NBA edition. I am Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith. And we're going to break down this nice 9-game slate at DraftKings, hopefully helping you get the best plays possible and build the best lineups possible. By the way, if you want to do that at a very high level, you should be using a lineup optimizer of some sort. What we're using for our projections as we break this slate down is DFS Hero. You can get a 15% off discount if you click our link at the bottom of this video in the video description, and hopefully that'll help you. I might be a little bit rusty in this as far as running this episode and all that. So Taylor, please forgive me if I slip up at all. Also, whoever's watching, please forgive me. But we want to get this out early because there's a lot to talk about, and hopefully we can help you win today. If we do, please give this video a like and also consider subscribing to the DFS Build if you haven't already. All right, dude, let's get right into it. I've missed it. I'm excited to do this with you. We got the Hornets as 12-point dogs in Cleveland against the Cavs. This game is gross, 205.5 total. So I don't really see a lot of interest for myself, but starting on the Hornets side, who stands out for you?
Really nobody. Bad team in a bad spot. I guess Poku you can play off the bench. The minutes have been there a little bit the last few games, and he's still 3.9, so I think that's okay.
Your boy Poku.
Poku and Bertans, like they're dorky white Euro shooters, but not super psyched about anything here. This team is awful, and they have a 96.5 total, and I think we can move on.
Yep. I do like the price on Miles Bridges and Brandon Miller, but I don't like the matchup at all. The other side, Jared Allen leads the way for the Cavs with a 40-point fantasy point projection. It's obviously a really, really good matchup for him. It's a good matchup for the Cavs as a whole. Spida remains out. Evan Mobley played in the last game, but he could miss this one just because of rest purposes. And Strus and Dean Wade are questionable. Unsure if they're actually going to be back. But obviously, if they're back, that kind of hurts some of these other plays a little bit. But it's the Hornets, man. You got to have some interest in Cleveland, I think, right? So who stands out for you?
I don't have much interest at all. I'm probably not really playing anyone in this game. I think LeVert is okay. I think Garland is fine, 7-7, but not really a huge discount there, even with more usage without Mitchell. Charlotte's defense isn't quite as bad as it was for most of the year. They're playing at a slower pace, so I don't know. Cleveland only has a 108.5 total, too. So first game of the night, I don't think I'm going to be too invested in it.
Yeah, I would agree overall. I will note Niang looks decent at 4.9 if Mobley is in fact out and if Dean Wade remains out. I think that's an okay value. I'm not really feeling excited to get to anybody in this game, but if you land on LeVert, Garland, Jared Allen, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I would prefer Mobley to actually be out, though, if I am going to go towards those guys. I mean, the LeVert thing, though, he's been smashing, and last night he really sucked for me and everybody else who played him. So there's a little bit of recency bias baked into that. I am seeing he's carrying 16% ownership, so it's not like, the field cares that much just yet. But if he's going to be owned, I would obviously get away from him. Over in the Boston-Atlanta game, this is a fun one. We got the Hawks hosting the Celtics. Atlanta is an 11.5-point dog. This game does have a 225 total. There is some injury news to monitor for Boston. Derek White is questionable, and Jrue Holiday is out. So right away, obviously, if Derek White and Jrue are both out, that opens things up quite a bit and makes Boston pretty appealing in a smash spot. So Taylor, who do you prioritize here if White is out?
I assume it'd be Pritchard again. He's 5'6", so it's his price is coming up, but he's been quite good. The minutes have been there. Certainly a good matchup tonight against Atlanta. I guess that's okay. Tatum, 10K flat. Good enough spot for him. Don't mind that. I think White, if he plays, is fine at 7-8, but he's getting up there, and Holiday is the only one missing from the lineup. So I don't think it's a huge boost or anything you actually have to get to. It's just kind of an okay team that I'm not super psyched about either, honestly, on this slate.
Which is unfortunate because the Hawks are like a dream matchup. I think my thing is Tatum and Jaylen Brown are both now priced up. They're both 100% playable. I don't see them as necessary, studs on the slate at all, even with Derek White out. I think they obviously look very, very good if he is out. Porzingis looks really good at 7.9 as well. The only issue is, like, they've kind of been weird with his minutes lately, and I don't really like that. And then I think the only guy for me that I feel is close to a core play would be Pritchard. Still pretty cheap at 5.6K if Derek White is out. I think he's still playable if Derek White is in, but the price, it's getting a little bit high. So I don't think anybody for Boston has to be in your lineup tonight, but if Derek White is out, everybody would get a significant boost, and it would start with Peyton Pritchard for me. All right, for the Hawks, obviously there's blowout risk here. Not a very good matchup for them at all. A pretty big spread. But if the game stays close, start with DeJounte Murray up top, almost a 50-point fantasy projection, and not going to get a lot of ownership. He would look pretty good. How are you feeling about the Hawks?
Murray looks okay, but he's almost 10K and facing Boston, so
right.
It's hard to be too confident in that. If he is low-owned, I guess it's fine, but if he's going to be somewhat popular, I'd rather not. Fernando is the one I'm getting to the most, but he is center only now. He had power forward the other day, which made him a little more easy to get to. He's still fine off the bench for 4-4, like we saw in the last game. There's upside, but, there's going to be a lot of value on this slate, particularly at center, so I don't really want to congregate around Fernando if he's going to be the chalk option. Like, we have Jokic questionable, Wemby questionable. There's all sorts of potential value at this position, so I'm getting a lot of him now, but I assume he'll go away later, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he's fine at 4.4K. I think this is possibly a case of, is lightning going to strike twice? Is Bruno Fernando going to fucking smash that much 2 games in a row? Probably not. And it's not a good matchup. I do think, obviously, coming off the bench, that you don't have to fear the blowout with him at least. So that's nice. And I'll just kind of clarify. I think DeJounte Murray is a fine play, but I agree his price is just, it keeps ticking up and up and up, and it's not a good matchup, not a good spread. He's looking like a pretty decent tournament play, depending on where ownership goes on this slate, but he's far from a priority. And I guess DeAndre Hunter at 6K is okay. Boggy at 6.7 is okay. Clint is they're all okay, but the matchup sucks. So not really looking to get Hawks in my lineup personally. All right, so Pistons and Knicks are the next game. This game is a 16-point spread, largest spread of the entire slate. And rightfully so, because both Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren are questionable. I would imagine Cade is back, though, because last game, which I got hit by yesterday on the early slate, he was a random scratch, and I was out at a park, didn't catch it in time. I'd imagine he has a pretty good chance of being back in this game, and Duren obviously could too. But the spread indicates to me one of them is going to miss. They're also still without Isaiah Stewart and Azar Thompson. Fontecchio is questionable, so either way you look at it, Detroit is going to be a possible source of value. So how are you feeling about Cade and Duren if they're in, and what Pistons cheap guys stand out to you?
None of them. I'm probably not playing anyone if those guys are in. I think Fontecchio is doubtful or out. I don't see him right now. But even that, like Chimezie Metu, he's cheap and the minutes should be there, but he's Chimezie Metu. It feels like a little bit of a chase after yesterday. James Wiseman is a good value at 5.7 if Duren's out again, good per minute guy and all that, but this is another team with a 96 total. So the value guys don't look too appealing other than Wiseman, IMO.
Yeah, it's not a good matchup on the road against the Knicks. The thing with Metu, though, is he's 4.1. He played 39 minutes. If all those guys are out again, it's going to be pretty hard to get away from Metu at that price. I don't think, if that is the context, I don't think that's chasey. That doesn't mean he's going to work out because he's still Metu. But I think he's a good play at 4.1 if Duren and Fontecchio are both out. Cade and Duren both, if they're in, fine plays, good prices, not a good matchup. They won't be owned, so I think they're totally fine. And then obviously if they are out or if one of them are out, Jaden Ivey looks fine at 6.4, and Saucer at 4.7 is a totally viable value. But I'm with you. I'm not really feeling great about Pistons either way because it's not a good spot. Knicks on the other side obviously look really good. The only real concern is 16-point spread. That tends to scare people away. If it doesn't, though, Jalen Brunson is a good price. He's pushing for almost 47 fantasy points at DFS Hero, and it's a really, really good matchup. So how are you feeling about Brunson, and how are you feeling about the rest of the Knicks?
Yeah, all 5 starters look good. McBride's been starting lately with the shorthanded lineup, routinely playing 40-plus minutes. Ditto for Hart. DiVincenzo, they all look good. Hartenstein's a little underpriced. Now his minutes are up a little bit. Not really too scared of the blowout. Seems like Tibbs plays the guys regardless, upper 30s minutes. So I think they're all good plays. Brunson maybe a little underpriced at 9.2. I'll probably be around the field on all of them. I don't have a strong conviction on any of them, but I'm happy to play any of the starters, but unlikely to get to the bench unless they start Achua or something. I guess you can shove him into a lineup or two.
Yeah, I'm mostly with you here. I think the Knicks look really good based on the minutes. I mean, McBride is playing like 40-plus minutes a game. Hart's playing 40-plus minutes. DiVincenzo's minutes are rock solid with OG out again. I like all of these guys. I see no reason to not use them. I mean, there is the blowout risk. I mean, Tibbs could always, reverse course there and sit like Brunson because Brunson's had some injury issues lately. So that is something to consider. But they all look really good. If they get into your lineup, I'm totally fine with them. And the cool thing is they're not really garnering a lot of ownership right now because it's going in different directions. So I like the Knicks quite a bit. All right, the Nets are strangely another team I like, which feels awesome, certainly. They're all really cheap. They face the Raptors. This game is a 217.5 total, so that's not very inviting, but they look pretty good. They're 6.5-point favorites on the road here, which is a little odd to me, but I guess the Raptors are without two key starters, so maybe it's not actually odd. Anyways, Cam Thomas leads the way at 7.3K and the best projection for the Nets. How do you feel about Thomas, and how do you feel about the rest of Brooklyn?
Thomas looks decent. I'm getting way too much of this team. Like, I don't want to play them, even though it's a good spot. They just are not a very good team either, and I feel like it never works out. But Finney-Smith, cheap. Trendon Watford, min price. Lonnie Walker, 3.4. All look really good, I think. Nick Claxton at 6.4, maybe a little underpriced too, relative to where he's been for most of the year. Raps obviously don't really stop opposing bigs, so certainly a good spot for him. I'm a little nervous to commit to Nick Claxton at center on a slate, like I mentioned, that should have plenty of value at that position, but he's fine. He should be able to pay off that salary. Finney-Smith is the one I'm getting to the most, which is alarming, but as of now, that's the way it is. I assume I'll get less when more value opens up later, though.
Yeah, never feels good to like the Nets. But yeah, everybody looks totally fine here. Nobody stands out as a must play on this slate. But if you get to Cam Thomas, Mikal Bridges, Dennis Schroeder, I got no problem with that. I agree with the center point with Claxton. If it wasn't for that, Claxton at 6.4 would look really, really good. And he just does. He's a really good play in this spot tonight. He's too cheap. So I think that my favorite play here is Claxton. I like the floor for Schroeder with Ben Simmons obviously out for the year. So, and like you said, you can punt with like Lonnie Walker or something. I don't think I really want to do that. But if you get to Thomas, Claxton, Bridges, or Schroeder, I mean, I don't have a problem with it at all. All right, other side of this game are the Raptors. They are 6.5-point home dogs with both RJ Barrett and Emmanuel quickly out. Obviously, or also off the bench, Chris Boucher and Jonte Porter are also out. So a lot of usage to go around for Toronto. If this game stays close, you should feel pretty good about Kelly Olynyk, Gary Trent, and Bruce Brown at least. How do you feel about those three guys, and what other Raptors are in your pool tonight?
Those three look good. They're all priced up a bit, but they can pay those off too. Olynyk with no Jonte Porter, the minute should be a little more secure. I think he's a good play at 7.1. Freeman Liberty at 3.9, unfortunately, is someone that I'm looking at for value just because he's cheap. Shooting guard, point guard eligible. He's been playing a role lately. So I think that's okay. I think Jamias Ramsey might be gone, which also might open up some minutes for him. That's really it. I don't really want to pay 5.3 for Dick. I don't want to pay 5.1 for Abaji. That just seems like too much to pay, even though they are playing minutes lately. Freeman, Liberty, Brown, Trent, and Olynyk are the ones that I'm looking to the most.
I would agree that Olynyk, Trent, Brown are the top plays here and that they're the safest. I'm not off of Dick completely. I mean, he's still a fine price for his role. He's going to get 33, 35 minutes here. He's going to get extra usage. Like Baji also totally fine at 5.1. I agree they're not like necessarily core plays here or anything, but they're going to play 30 plus minutes and have roles like in a good matchup. So I think they're fine if they're your last piece in. But yeah, Raptors as a whole look pretty good tonight. All right, Wizards and Bulls in Chicago. The Bulls are 12.5-point favorites. The Wizards are another team that look to be severely undermanned. Jordan Poole is questionable. Kyle Kuzma, Tyus Jones, and Bilal Coulibaly are all out. So they are super, super down bad right now, which explains the 12.5-point spread. Denny Avdia is looking pretty solid at 7.2 up top. He has the best projection for the Wizards at 36.72 at DFS Hero. So give some insight as far as your interest in Jordan Poole, who is questionable, and how you're approaching the Wizards if he's out.
Yeah, Poole and Avdia look really good to me with Kuzma out. I think, the usage is going to flow through Poole in particular. Avdia should get a little more. The matchup's not great, but it is what it is. I think they're decent plays in the mid-range. If Poole is out, I guess it's going to be Jared Butler, maybe, starting at point guard, which is not fun, but he's 4'4". I guess he's cheap enough to play if he's going to see 30-ish minutes or so in a starting role. Rashawn Holmes for 4.8. The minutes have still been there of late. Bagley came back in the last game, but Holmes still played more minutes than him. He's cheap enough to get to as well. Kispert also been starting. He's kind of like those Raptors, like Dick and Agbaji, just kind of a little priced up to where he normally is, but minutes are there. He's got a route here. Chicago allows a lot of three-pointers. Obviously, that's Kispert's game. So I think he's okay. Johnny Davis for 3-4 starting, but really bad per minute. He's just a bad basketball player, it appears. So likely to fade him at all costs.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, depending on the lineup and if Poole is out, I think Davis and maybe even Jules Bernard, if he's in there, along with Jared Butler, as you said, I think they're viable. I think, obviously those guys are really, really cheap, 3.4 and 3.6K. I wouldn't bet my mortgage on those guys panning out, but if Poole is out, they would look very playable on the slate. If Poole's in, I wouldn't look at them at all, and I probably wouldn't look at Jared Butler either. But yeah, Denny, Poole, and Kispert are the three I like the most. Kispert looks really good here, in my opinion. A little bit pricey for who he is, but the role is good. Obviously, Poole with the usage, and Denny would look really, really good as well. I don't personally want to mess with the Rashawn versus Bagley thing. I just don't know who I can actually trust there. Bagley is a little bit too expensive for not having like a solidified role. And same with Rashawn. Like Rashawn's always like a DNP risk, I feel, no matter where he is. So it's just not a situation I want to mess with. And it's really just going to depend if Poole is in or out here for me as far as how I look at the Wizards. On the other side, obviously the Bulls are in a really, really good spot at home as big favorites against the Wizards. DeMar leads the way with a 42-point fantasy projection at TFS Hero, 21%. Actually, I looked at the wrong thing. No, almost 20%, 19% boom rating, which I'm almost surprised the boom ratings are so light here for the Bulls. Maybe that has something to do with their price here. I don't know. But the matchup's really good. DeMar is, in theory, the best play for the Bulls. Vooch right behind him. So you got to have some interest. By the way, Kobe White is back, so that's worth knowing. Let me check real quick also status of Alex Caruso. I guess he's probable. So nothing really new there. Okay, so how are you feeling about the Bulls here?
Yeah, obviously it's a great spot. They have a super high total. Washington is atrocious. DeRozan at 8.2 is the one that stands out, like you said. It's a good spot for Vooch, but 8.5 getting up there, a lot of opportunity cost at center. I don't mind looking at Drummond, though, as a value center. Like if someone like Bruno Fernando is going to be chalk, I don't mind pivoting some of that to Drummond at what should be low ownership off the bench. Certainly has upside against the Wizards, the worst rebounding team in the NBA. So good spot for them. Io and Caruso look a little too expensive for me. I think they're still playable just because the minutes are there, but 7-1 for Io feels a bit rich for my blood.
Oh, big time. 100% agree with everything you said there. I will note that Vooch, it's going to be hard to get him comfortably based off price and based off of all the other options at center, but he projects just as well as DeMar. He's about the same price, and he's going to be way less owned if we can trust current ownership projections. Right now, DeMar is coming in at 21.6, and Vooch, because of those reasons, is coming in at 2.7. So if we can get like a 50 burger from Vooch at low ownership in a smash spot, that is pretty that sounds pretty good to me. Probably not on Kobe just because it's he's coming back and he could be limited or something. But yeah, I agree with everything else you said here. Bulls look really, really good if you get to these guys. Oh, by the way, the Drummond call. that could be very interesting if this game blows out too. So Drummond at 4.8K, I agree, is pretty interesting as a little GPP dart. All right, Blazers and Rockets, another possible blowout. A lot of nasty spreads on this slate. So I think for me, I would kind of just ignore the spreads to a certain degree because there's so many landmine opportunities here. You just got to play the best plays, right? So the Blazers are 12.5-point road dogs, as they should be. They got a lot of question marks here. DeAndre Ayton and Anthony Simons missed their last game. They're both questionable. Malcolm Brogdon remains out. And Jeremy Grant, I believe, is doubtful. Yep, he's doubtful. So even if those guys are in, the Blazers are going to be shorthanded. So some of these value guys are going to pop. Obviously, Scoot Henderson and Banton could look good again. But we need to know the statuses of these guys to feel really confident about the Blazers either way. So how are you looking at Portland tonight?
Yeah, it all depends on the news. Duop Reith obviously would look really good if Ayton's out again. Jabari Walker would have a path to more minutes in that scenario. I think Chris Murray looks decent, 4-3. Playing tons of minutes lately. He's been starting, so he should be pretty safe regardless, I would think. Scoot's come up a little bit, 6-1, but minutes have been there for him. He's playing well. Don't mind that, especially if Simons is out. And then I guess a dusting of Ayton, just because we've seen a ceiling for him in a big minute role. I wouldn't think he'd be limited if he's in because it's an elbow. So fine with him, but we'll kind of have to wait and see on the news.
Yeah, I agree. And also, Kamara looks pretty good too at 4.5K. A little bit more expensive than Chris Murray, but he's not carrying even close to the same ownership. I do think Simons possibly being out would boost his ownership a little bit, but it also boosts his projection. He's playing big minutes too. So both those guys, I mean, you can play them together, I think. And I would just kind of lean towards the value here just because it's a big spread and not a good spot on the road. But if Ayton and Simons are in, you obviously can play them. Yeah, so that does it for Portland. Oh, okay, over to the Rockets we go. Jalen Green has been just straight fire, but now he's 8.8K. So I don't personally know if I want to play Jalen Green at almost 9K, but we do have to consider that, like, the way he's playing is because he's benefiting immensely from Şengün being out. So if this is just who Jalen Green is right now, is he maybe not expensive enough? I mean, that's pretty arguable. And it's a really good matchup. So Jalen Green up top has the best projection for Houston, not garnering ownership, and the Blazers rank 28th against shooting guards. So are you liking Jalen Green at all at this price? And what are the Rockets stand out for you?
I don't mind Green just because we've seen the ceiling is there. And like you said, he might not be priced up enough, but I'm not really getting to too much right now. I'm actually getting more Van Vliet for 500 less, just kind of a high floor play. Then it should be pretty safe for him, I would think. The one I'm getting to most is Amen Thompson once again for 6.8. The price is coming up, but does a little bit of everything while he's out there. Good per minute, good matchup and all that. Landale should start with Jabari Smith suspended. So 5.3, another value center to consider if he's in starting. I mean, Jeff Green would be the alternative if he's not. He's cheap, but he's Jeff Green, so hard to get too excited about that. I guess you can mix Dylan Brooks in too, just because he's cheap as well. But yeah, probably Amen Thompson, then kind of everyone else for me after that.
Yeah, no real new points for me. I agree with all that. The only thing I would say, if Fred VanVleet's going to end up being chalky, I would just then pivot to Jalen Green. He's only 500 more. He projects better. And he's obviously exhibited a really, really good ceiling. So that would be my call if the ownership gets out of control. It doesn't really look like it's going to based off the way the slate is projecting right now. But if it does, that's what I would do. All right, Suns and Spurs in San Antonio. These two teams just played, and I believe the Suns blew them out, as you would imagine. That was with Wemby, by the way. Wemby is questionable. So naturally, that's going to put Zach Collins up top. We'll get to the Spurs in a second, of course. Devin Booker crushed in this matchup, when they last faced. So, I mean, Booker and the Suns all look good. The problem is they're at full strength, and it is a pretty big spread at 12 points. I will say this game is a really nice 233.5 total. So if this game can stay close, all these guys could just blow up and break the slate. So how are you feeling about Phoenix here, and is there anybody you're prioritizing?
Booker would be the one, if anyone, just because he's under 9K now, and obviously the matchup's good. But whenever they're at full strength, I don't really get to too much here. KD, you can argue, is a little underpriced too. If Booker's going to be more popular, I don't mind pivoting that to KD, but otherwise, kind of a team that I'm not too interested in overall.
Now, let me just pull up Phoenix here for a second. Yeah, I agree. Whenever they're at full strength, I don't really like going there. I guess my only real note for the Suns would be Devin Booker's coming in at 29% ownership. If Devin Booker is going to be monster chalk in a possible blowout in a really soft spot, and KD, who projects just under him, is only 400 more and unowned, I'm going to go play KD. I think Devin Booker's a good play, good price. He's got a 27% boom rating, blows every other Suns play out of the water in this spot. But if everybody's going to go play Booker, I'm going KD. All right, so on the other side of the Spurs, obviously Wemby at 10.5, very, very playable. If he's in, he projects for almost 50 fantasy points. He's not garnering a whole lot of ownership. This game does have blowout risk, but it's still Wemby. And as you've said many times, he's probably not expensive enough. I like him fine. I don't think he's a priority. The real interest, in my opinion, is if he's out. Obviously, it's even greater risk for blowout if that's the case. But why don't you let everybody know who stands out the most if Wemby doesn't play tonight?
Yeah, it's obviously Zach Collins for 5K. Center only, not ideal, but once again, you can add him to the list of value centers, probably at the top of that list if Wemby's out. Wemby in, he's okay. I'm not really getting to anyone. I'm got about 3% Sohan leading the way for 5.9. I think that's okay. I'm not really garnering any ownership. Don't expect him to. If Wemby's out, Sohan, Keldon Johnson, Vassell, Trey Jones all benefit from a usage standpoint, so I will have more San Antonio interest if he's out. But if he's in, this is another team that I'm not really too excited to get to.
No, I mean, they lost 131 to 106 with Wemby on the floor. So it'll be pretty bad. I think without Wemby, everybody you mentioned is absolutely viable, and they're going to look pretty good in lineup optimizers. But the only one that I would feel obligated to play would be Collins. And I just wouldn't worry about the blowout risk at 5K. I just think he'd be a smash play at that point. All right, next game, Grizzlies and the Nuggets in Denver. Game has a 213.5 total and a 15-point spread. I would imagine that point spread suggests that either Jokic and or Jamal Murray are back in this game, but that is hanging like a dark cloud over our heads right at the moment. For the Grizz, there is also injury news to monitor. Let me double check here. Desmond Bane is questionable, and Vince Williams is doubtful. But Jaren Jackson Jr. is ready to rock. They got a bunch of other guys questionable on the injury list too. It is a mess. I don't see why we're super interested in playing Memphis guys in general, anyways. How are you feeling?
Yeah, Jordan Goodwin, maybe that's it. If he starts, I think he's fine. Otherwise, this is a fade.
Yeah, I agree. If Goodwin starts at 4.3, that's fine. Or if Scottie Pippen starts at 5.4, I guess. But I mean, G.G. Jackson's getting all kinds of minutes no matter what, but his prices come up. And Jaren Jackson Jr. is always there if Bane is out, but I just don't like it. On the other side, obviously, if Jokic and or Murray are out, that does open up crazy value. Christian Brown, Reggie Jackson, Aaron Gordon, all these guys crushed with these dudes sitting out in their last game. I assume they're going to be back. So I'm not really looking at this game at all. It's probably a full fade for me. And especially with it way later in the night, I think planning for them to be out makes a very complicated slate. So I just think I'm going to avoid it. How are you feeling?
I do like getting to Jokic a little bit, just because I don't think anyone's going to play him. And with Luka also in the same window at 9 Eastern, I think you can pivot. Like if you have Luka in your lineup in the util spot or something, pivot down to Jokic if your build is, otherwise chalky or you need a differentiator to kind of close you out. I think Murray and Jokic are both playable, but it's not a great game environment. They're probably going to roll in this one. Memphis just can't score, so hard to get to anyone here. I will be getting more Luka than Jokic. But I do think a dusting of Jokic is always okay.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I agree with that sentiment for sure, because these guys are both in the last two games of the night. I think, they're both at 8 o'clock. So, yeah, for sure. If you can slide them down to your utility spot and you have the right money there to make it make sense, they are separated by $900, so that isn't exactly an easy thing to do. You probably would have to have a second body in one of these 8 o'clock games. But yeah, totally viable strategy for sure. All right, so the Mavs in the last game of the night taking on the Jazz in Utah. The Mavs are 8.5-point favorites. Let me check real quick for Dallas. Maxi Kleber is questionable, so obviously him being out could solidify minutes a little bit more for some of the Dallas bigs. But it's looking like, same thing as usual for the Mavs. For me, it's just going to be Luka or bust for the most part. I have a little bit of interest in Daniel Gafford, maybe even PJ Washington, thanks to his minutes lately. But with Derek Lively there, and especially if Kleber also plays, probably would just kind of get away from all those guys and just play Luka. He is crazy owned right now for the projections, 36%. But he does have the best projection of the slate at 65.73. So even at his price and ownership, it's hard to get away from Luka. How you feeling?
Yeah, I assume there'll be enough value to get to him pretty comfortably. So great matchup, decently close spread, like close enough to where I'm not scared of the blowout. Could happen, but they should be on the right side of it if it does. So I think he's a really good play at 12-8. He and Gafford are the ones I'm getting to really exclusively. Gafford, maybe I'll get to less depending on what kind of value we have at center tonight, but he's a good play either way at 5.9. Minutes have been up a little bit of late.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, Kyrie's, he's in your pool. He's viable. It's a really good spot. But I really like Luka here tonight. I don't really. You could go balance. You could argue for balance due to a lot of these spreads and the pricing. A lot of really good mid-range guys today, but I do feel like it's a Luka night, and I'm going to eat that chalk personally. All right, last team of the night here, Utah on the other side. Obviously, Utah, if they have more bodies on hand, like Lowry Markkanen, and he's questionable, and Jordan Clarkson, who is also questionable. If they're in, obviously they have a much greater chance of keeping this competitive, and this could be perhaps the most stackable game of the night. It does have the highest total at 237, and as you said, the spread is not egregious. So if Utah can have their dudes and make this a game, you can start thinking about some runbacks on the other side of Luka. So who stands out for you with Lowry or Clarkson in, and what are you liking if they're out?
Not really anyone either way. I think Markkanen for 8K is okay if he's in. Played 35 minutes a couple games ago when he was back, so not concerned about a limit, maybe a little underpriced there relative to where he normally is. I think Sexton, if Clarkson and or Markkanen are out, is fine again for 7.5 off the bench. Keontae, you can always make a case for minutes should be secure, but if the team is healthy, it's pretty deep, and the minutes should be kind of spread around. So not the best source of value on this slate.
No, I agree. Not value, but I like the mid-range plays here. I think it's hard to really play for and prioritize Markkanen. Same with Clarkson. They don't really stand out even if we knew they were in. They'd just be kind of like, okay. But I do really like John Collins and Keontae George and Colin Sexton if you want to play for one or both those guys being out. I don't think anybody here, maybe Keontae George at 12% right now. Maybe he carries a little bit of ownership. I do like the idea if I'm going to pay that much for Luka and eat that chalk to maybe get one or two low-owned runbacks from Utah to close out this slate. Not that you have to, of course. All right, before we wrap things up, let's real quick look at the overall ownership projections. Luka leads the way at 36%. Devin Booker right behind him. Is there anybody that stands out here for ownership that you are likely to be severely underweight on or fading?
Grant Williams. I don't know why he's popping up in a room. He's like an all play to me. Two is overvalued 20%. I will be significantly under that.
Yeah, I think for me it's probably like Freeman Liberty because he's burned me before and he's not necessarily a very reliable player.
All of it, like Lively, Tim Hardaway Jr., it all looks really bad. I disagree with most of this except for
I agree. I don't see like any of these chalky guys outside of perhaps Luka, maybe Devin, where you're like eating that chalk because you feel like you have to, or you feel like they're in such an unbelievably great spot. So I will be waiting for the slate to open up and definitely not be attacking Dorian Finney-Smith and Grant Williams and Freeman Liberty and all these jackwagons. So yeah, for sure. All right, real quick also, boom rating. Luka leads the way again. Devin Booker right behind. As far as building your roster around one major priority, who stands out the most tonight as a guy you'd be severely overweight on or that you'd be locking in? Even though I know you don't like to lock in, but if you had to, who's the guy that you're really going to build around the most?
It's got to be Luca. I don't know if I'll be over the field. I think 36 is pretty high anyway. I'll probably be right around that, depending on value. The other guy that stands out is Poole. I mentioned the usage should be there without Kuzma, so I think he's a solid play at 6-7.
Yep, I agree. I agree across the board. All right, so that does it for us. Hopefully we helped you by breaking down these games, point you to our favorite plays and favorite values. If we do help you, please give this video a like and also consider subscribing to our channel. We wish you luck tonight. Thanks for watching.